Oh, you know we had to do it. On today's bonus Locked On Mavericks, the Mavericks make it trade. We'll talk about Josh Richardson. We'll talk about the draft, give our thoughts. We're back together, me and Isaac, finally.
Yeah.
On Locked On Mavs.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Hey, Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and coordinator for the Locked On Podcast Network. And joining me, as always, my co-host, contributor at Mavs.com. The draft day in studio, son. The one more thinking. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Woo! Well, one, I feel like we have a million things we could talk about.
Always. That's why we do these. We always go like these bonus shows over draft, free agency, all that. We're ready.
Yes, and we have a Dallas Maverick trade.
Ooh.
Let's go. But
Wait,
no,
is it worth the button? Is it official enough for it to not warrant the button?
not yet. By the time you're listening to this on Saturday,
Ooh.
it could be official though.
But for now, the Dallas Mavericks have traded Josh Richardson to the Boston Celtics for nothing. They get a $10.9 million traded player exception. We are quite familiar with the traded player exception after getting the biggest in history at one point when the Mavericks traded Harrison Barnes to the Sacramento Kings. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about maybe players that they could target with that TPE and all that kind of stuff. So we'll get into that. But first, I mean, what do you think about this trade? What was your reaction? Josh Richardson, the comments on Reddit were like, just all time. Like, I hope his family did not go on Reddit because they were like chanting and celebrating his exit from the Mavericks, which I thought was pretty sad.
Yeah, here's my thing with Josh. He's a great guy.
Yep.
I don't think he sucks.
No.
I don't think he's a bad NBA player. It just didn't work. And it didn't work for a lot of different reasons. COVID being a huge part of that he got COVID, it affected him for a long time. And then it just the fit never worked like a lot of us thought it would. I mean, how many moves have people made that it made sense when the trade happened? I thought it made sense on draft night. They went defense.
Yep.
It wasn't as bad as the Rondo thing. He's not Rondo, so don't like.
He was a great teammate, right? It's not like he quit on the team. I mean, he got benched and he was maybe a little bit upset about that, but it's not like he sulked and didn't do anything. Like, he went out there and played.
Yes. So for him, I'm happy for him. He's going to a playoff team in Boston that he's probably going to have a good role on. And for Boston, it's like, Dan, you're getting him for free.
Yeah.
So I think that's a solid move for Boston to have this exception and it's not taking up. It's not like they have this cap space they were waiting to spend on somebody. They get him for free. But if you're for Dallas, this is a huge win too, because yeah, I just did a mini hype up session for Josh Richardson, but this was a big key of the offseason is like, how could they dump Richardson's contract? Because he was probably, he was going
because he sucks, right?
He was going to opt in at $11 million. Now, I thought it was going to happen on draft night. I thought that was the main thing. I was fully expecting a Josh Richardson for pick 52 or whatever it is in the draft. And it didn't happen. I thought Dallas would come away with some type of draft pick. It obviously didn't happen. But when I got the notification today that Josh Richardson was moved, it's like, okay, just further evidence that Dallas is really pushing their chips in for this flexibility and for this cap space coming up in a few days.
Yeah, so this Josh Richardson trade, he's not on the team anymore. He's gone. The Mavericks now have a role to fill, I think, and that was a thing that we wanted the Mavericks to do. And they get a traded player exception for it, which I thought was pretty smart to get that. Instead of just dumping him for nothing, trading it, like you said, for the 50th pick or something into somebody's cap space, and you literally get nothing. But at least now you get this traded player exception, wherein that, though, you can, wherein that you can trade for somebody if you're over the cap into that space. You remember when we had the Harrison Barnes one?
It's what Boston just did to take Richardson in. So
right.
Like they had a traded player exception, and that's the brilliant part of this for Dallas, because, when you looked across the league, if they were going to dump Josh Richardson, it's like, okay, they got to attach something to it probably, or take back some type of salary, or you're going to be taking up somebody's cap space this summer. You're looking at the teams with cap space saying, will you please take Josh Richardson from us so we can have more cap space? And they're going to say, well, you're going to have to give us something if we're going to take on the salary that you don't want. And so you canvass the league and say, all right, is there a playoff team out there? Like, the perfect dream scenario for Dallas to dump his contract is there a dream playoff contending type team that has a traded player exception that says, you know what, we need another vet that can play on our team, and we're not going to have to give up anything for him. Bam. This Boston situation happens, which for a lot of people, including myself, I didn't think was possible, because this exception, the rest of the Hayward exception for Boston, it wasn't enough. Like, Josh Richardson's money for next year was going to be like higher than what the exception amount was. So that was the confusing part for me, is I didn't think Boston was a possibility, but Dallas had, I don't want to say a loophole, but Dallas was smart about this, of saying, man, if we can fit this in before the league year moves into next year, to where his salary number is at what it is right now, then it can fit into that exception. And that was a brilliant move by the Mavericks.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about when the Mavericks brought in Andrew Baker from the Brooklyn Nets. He's a noted capologist. They kept Keith Grant on the in the Mavericks organization in the front office. He's a guy that knows the cap really well. You surround Nico Harrison with these guys, and Mark Cuban with these guys, to be able to pull off stuff like this. And I thought that it was smart, and it just seems like it had that. Well, okay, if we don't do it, or if we do this trade later, we won't get this bonus for it. But if we do it now with his contract from this past season instead of the contract that's going to start next season on Monday, then all of a sudden it creates this traded player exception, so that when we are over the cap, when we sign a Kyle Lowry, we can then take this $10.9 million and trade it for somebody else, which is what the Celtics just did for Richardson. So I think it was a pretty smart move. I'm going to go back to the Richardson thing and just say, that sucks. It just sucks all around, because I had such high hopes for him. I thought that, I saw some of the playmaking he did while he was with the Miami Heat, and I thought that he could maybe get back to some of that, and it just never panned out for him. And sometimes, like you said, it just doesn't work, and it was just a bummer overall. And I actually am pretty disappointed with Mavs fans that are celebrating his departure from the Mavericks like he was just this trash player that didn't do anything, which is, that's just classless to me, I think. But so it is what it is, and he's not on the Mavericks anymore, and I hope all the best for him with the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I'm super excited for him. I do think he'll help the Celtics team too. And the Celtics option, I was just listening to Zach Lowe and Bobby Marks earlier, their post-draft pod, and even they were kind of like counting out the Celtics in that scenario, because it's like, oh, he's too much for that exception. And it's like, that's where it was so smart for Dallas to do this before this, this league year ended on that. And one of the things we were debating, Mavs fans on Twitter, whatever, we're debating too, of like, okay, well, if we can't dump Josh Richardson's salary, can we swap him with a player of, around equal salary that we can get, like, that would actually be in the rotation? That'd be a better fit. And I've seen different names thrown out there, and like a name, for instance, I've seen somebody say, you know what if we just swapped him for Derrick Jones Jr.? And it's like, maybe he could be part of the rotation, a bigger wing. The Mavericks liked him, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that doesn't help your salary cap situation. But here's the thing. Now you can basically do it while still preserving salary cap, because you dumped Josh Richardson, got the traded player, exception, and now you can target players in that same price range, and you're basically going to add them for free if that team is saying, like, hey, they're in it's normally like a third team in a deal, right? It's two teams are trying to negotiate something. They're trying to pull off a bigger deal. Let's say it like Portland and Philly, does a, CJ, Ben Simmons something. And it's like, we need to find a home for Derrick Jones Jr. And they call up Dallas. You got this exception. Will you take this? We'll give you a second. Also, Dallas has the exception to do it.
Yeah, let's go ahead and look at some of these guys. This is the Hoops Hype player salary for next season. These are some of the guys in the range the Mavericks could trade for. My number one option, I think, for this is Zion Williamson. He makes $10.7 million. The Mavericks have a $10.9 million traded player exception. Let's call up Jake Madison of the Pelicans.
You heard it here first.
Let's do the deal right now. It's done. Zion to the Mavs confirmed.
But right underneath him though, Larry Nance Jr.
Yeah.
Like what's his role, with the Cavs move? He obviously has another year on his deal, but that's a type of player to where if the Cavs do like a bigger deal or they're like, hey, we're trying to shed some money, they can't get off the Kevin Love contract. Will somebody take Larry Nance and give us a second for Nance? It's like Dallas has this exception now that they can do that. So that's the benefit of. We're going to talk about the salary cap space, that it creates for Dallas this summer and that more flexibility in that here in a second. But I think that the exception is something to point out too, because it's always nice to have one of those under your belt that you can use, and especially that there's going to be trades and stuff to go down soon.
Yeah, so if you're watching on YouTube, we have the Hoops Hype salary pulled up. If you're listening on the podcast, Larry Nance Jr., $10.7 million this upcoming season, and then it goes down to $9.6 million the next season. So it's down, and then that's the final year of his contract. He would be obviously my number one choice. I think he would fit well. He's like Maxey, but more athletic, not as good of a shooter, a little bit better of a passer, like just a couple of things different there, but would be an absolutely great fit for the Mavericks, I think, in that backup 5 type role.
Especially if
defender, all that.
Let's say Dallas, engages in a signing trade with Kyle Lowry and like a Dwight Powell or Maxey's in that deal. Or what if between, over the next 48 hours, Dallas does another like salary cap shedding move, to where they send Dwight Powell to San Antonio or something to where they create a little bit more cap space. And it's one of those guys in the front court, because we detailed the other day, like, hey, there's 3 contracts for Dallas. If they want to create more flexibility, it's Josh Richardson, Dwight Powell, and Maxi Kleber, because they all make in that $8 to $11 million range. Well, Josh is the guy that's out the door right now. If they want to create more space, but if it's one of those, front court guys, now you have the exception. And if you could go get a Larry Nance, if it takes 2 future seconds to get Larry Nance, well, there's your Dwight Powell or Maxey replacement in the front court just by using that exception. So brilliant move with the Josh Richardson move for Dallas and Boston. But who are some other names on this list that like you would be interested in?
Yeah, so you start looking and you see some, a lot of them are on rookie deals. So it's like Anthony Edwards, like they're not going for that. The Zion one is obviously a joke. Jeremy Lamb's guy makes 10.5. I don't know if he addresses anything for the Mavericks. Al-Farouq Aminu, $10.1 million expiring deal if that team just wanted to get rid of him. You have George Hill, $10 million. That one is a real one. If they wanted to add a veteran guard, that's a guy I think that maybe they could target. And then another one right under him, Thomas Satoransky. If they want, if the Bulls don't want to keep him anymore, he's expiring, they think they're going to lose him, then you trade him, or if he requests a trade or something. So those are a couple of guys that I think the Mavericks could target there.
What about my bestie right underneath Satoransky there? Slow-mo.
The nemesis, Kyle Anderson. He makes $9.9 million. That one could be one. But the other thing is you have to think about the other team. Why would this other team just give up some of these players? So like the Satoransky one doesn't really make sense. The George Hill one doesn't make a ton of sense. Like Jay Crowder fits in this, but why would the Suns give up him? Well, Derek Favors is the one that's interesting. And then there's another one. Derek Favors makes 9.7. He just got traded to the Thunder. The Thunder always love picks, and so maybe you trade a pick with him. And then Royce O'Neal is 8.8. Those are 2 guys. If the Jazz wanted to clear up some more space and didn't want to pay as much tax, then they could get off of those guys. But I think they already made that move with Favors.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be a big fan of using on Favors, especially with the player option that next season.
It just makes sense for the Jazz to make a move like that because they just did it, right? Like,
yeah. Derek Jones Jr. I know I mentioned him a while ago, but Montrezl Harrell, he makes 9.7.
Montrezl Harrell just thought he was going to Sacramento, and
exactly.
maybe he wanted to go there, and now all of a sudden, last second, he got sent to Washington, where he's now. That's a weird spot for him to be in. I guess he plays center there, but if he wants to play the 4, he's playing behind, like, you have Rui, you have Denny, you have Kuzma still, you have like all these guys that are already there. So if he didn't want to play there, then maybe that's an option for the Mavericks to trade this. So yeah, I think Harrell, Derrick Jones Jr., those are both great options. Jones Jr. would probably be my top pick out of these guys.
Yeah, I like him a lot. And it doesn't have to be in the 9 to 10 range too. You can always
Yeah.
split the exception up. You can always
Yep.
take a guy that's 4 to 5 million, or Orlando says Mo Bamba. Will you give us like 2 seconds for Mo Bamba? It's like it just gives you a flexibility that I know we laugh about. Traded player exceptions and TPs and all this stuff because teams set on them, and it's like, oh cool, you have this $25 million exception, that means you can fit Bradley Beal into and it's like, it doesn't work like that. But it allows you to be that third team. It allows you to where if you go out and you spend money and you're really kind of capped out a little bit as far as like spending, but you have this exception at the same time, it gives you something in your back pocket that you can say, all right, let's go get somebody as a third team in a deal to take on some money. Or if you're going to, like really pursuing somebody, to put a couple seconds on the board and say, hey, can we get this guy? So,
Yep.
Smart move all around by Dallas pulling this off.
Yeah, I think so. So there's a couple options there. There's really not a lot of guys that, I mean, you're really making more than 10 million a year, or you're like a minimum guy. They're like that middle class in the NBA, or at least if that's what the middle class is, there's just not a lot.
Yeah, and you could also look at some guys coming up that might be due for some extensions. Like you look at what Brooklyn did with Landry Shamet. They probably looked at that saying, we're not going to be able to pay Landry Shamet. It's not like he's going to get 20 a year, but they probably were uncomfortable with what they were going to have to pay him, so they ship him off for something else. So are there players in those similar type of situations that have a contract extension coming up maybe like next year that their team is saying, hey, we're not going to give them that, whatever it is, that Dallas could say, well, you know what, we'll take a flyer on it for a year and we might pay him next year. So there you go.
There was one name on this list that really stood out to me.
Ooh, I'm ready.
Michael Carter Williams.
Oh my gosh, don't even.
We know Jason Kidd loved Michael Carter Williams.
But can we talk about the cap space? Maybe after the break, we can. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Josh Richardson being traded to Boston for basically nothing. It gives Dallas more cap space this summer.
Absolutely. We'll talk about the cap space. We'll talk about a couple of draft thoughts coming up. All right, Isaac Harris, let's get into, we've been talking about the Josh Richardson trade. What about the cap space? What about that intrigues you, that now that they have cleared up that space, which, to be honest, I kind of assumed that they would be off that deal, but they did make the move, and now they have the cap space. They have, Bobby Marks pointed out, they have the cap space now to go after Kyle Lowry and give him the money that he would want.
Yeah, if they decline Willie's team option, it should give him around $34 million to spend. And, that's obviously factoring in Tim Hardaway. He has the huge cap hold. So you immediately go to that. And I think
I just want to explain for listener. Cap hold, $28 million. That's a placeholder for a player that gives you the bird rights. So if they decided they wanted to sign him, then they would, hold on to that cap hold. They would have how many more, they had like $5 million over that. They used that. So now they're like at that, and they can sign Tim Hardaway to go over the cap. But that $28 million sits there as a placeholder. So you can't use that whole cap. So you can't use the $30 million and then sign Tim Hardaway over the cap.
Yeah.
Just to whatever number you want. You have to have that $28 million in place. And so that's why you'll see some teams, they renounce the rights to this player. They renounce the rights. So the Mavericks will probably, unless they're going to just re-sign him, renounce the rights to Tim Hardaway Jr. because he's not going to make $28 million.
Yeah, and then they'll just sign him using their cap space. So if they do that fairly quick, let's just say, just for the easy sake of it, I don't think he'll get 20. I want to say around 18. But let's just say 20. Let's say
I'm going to go back to my list. There's too many guys wanting 20. There's Dennis Schroeder. There's, Devontae Graham was out there as a guy that might get $20 million. Walker Miller, Locked on Hornets, said that. There's, Reggie Jackson. There's Norman Powell. There's like so many of these guys, these two guards, 1 to 2 guards that are in that weird mid range of not an all-star, not even close, but a role player. Like all those guys can't get 20 million. There's not enough money out there.
Yeah. So there's 2 routes to this. There is, if you want to try to do Kyle Lowry and Tim Hardaway, then you're going to have to shed Dwight or Maxey probably. And because
if Lowry's making 30 million, which
if Lowry's even willing to take 26 to 30. So let's just say this. Let's say right off the bat, they renounced Tim. They signed Tim to $18 million a year. That leaves you with roughly like $16 million. Lowry's not coming in for $16 million. So then it's like, let's just say you find a way to shed.
Then what are Nico's relationships all about, Isaac? I thought he had relationships. He can't bring him here. He can't make that happen.
Hey, listen, Kyle, do you want to do the Lowry 1 signature shoe, Nike? We can do it next.
Jason Kidd goes, hold on. Now, I know you've liked your agency, but what about Excel? At Excel, we can take you further. He's like, wait, are you an agent? He's like, no, I'm a coach, but
you can excel farther in your. But then you have $16 million. So let's just say they find, they send Dwight Powell to San Antonio. Well, then you're around what, 27 million at that point. Then you're talking in the Kyle Lowry thing. But I think what a lot of people are looking at this, and immediately when that number was thrown out today of Dallas can now have $34 million, it's the Kyle Lowry's going to get paid. And if he's wanting 30 to 35 million, New Orleans is setting there with roughly 36 million. Now, if that's the price tag and Dallas is willing to say, we will start bidding with anybody out there, and it starts at 30, then Dallas is now in the game. And however you feel about that, if you like, however you like, I know some fans are out there saying, why are we going to give $30 million to an older Kyle Lowry?
We get that every time we talk about Lowry. And I'm like, yes. I think we explain this all the time.
2 years, 3 years, whatever the length of that is. If that's the price tag for Kyle Lowry, now Dallas is in that game. Because if New Orleans is sitting there saying, we'll give you 35 a year, but Dallas is sitting there saying, well, dang, we can give you like, I don't know, like 25. That's a big difference for Kyle Lowry. I don't know what means the most to him right now, but that's a big difference. So I think it just shows you a commitment to Dallas of saying, man, we're going to be there and we're going to be at the table. What gets tricky about it is, and this is what Mavs fans don't want to hear, is what if you put all the eggs in the basket for Kyle Lowry and the asking price is 30 to 35, and internally they make the decision, we want Lowry over Tim if we have to pick. And they put all the eggs in the basket for Kyle Lowry. He waits a few days and he picks Miami or whoever it is, and Tim goes elsewhere. And you're like, well, dang, we don't have Lowry or Tim.
That is the Dwight Howard conundrum.
Exactly. And so that's the worst case scenario, in that you would hope that, the relationship with Tim, gives you a little bit of, but it's a business and players get screwed over in the business too. So I don't blame
teams
players.
Get screwed over, right? Like,
yeah, I don't blame players too. Whenever it's like, if a team's like, hey, wait, but Miami's sitting there saying, we'll give you 18 a year, Tim, but why are you waiting on? So I don't blame players at the same time. So hopefully this is where relationships and connections come into play.
By the way, the max that the Mavericks could give him, or that anyone could give him, is $40 million. That's the maximum for a new contract in 2021, which is that's a lot.
Sheesh. A lot of money.
I think the only team that has that much is San Antonio, right?
I guess
just straight up,
New York,
just straight
New York's
up 40
up
million.
there. Yeah, New York's got that money. That's another sneaky thing too. New York moved back a couple times, gave himself another 2 to 3 extra million in cap space this summer. But push came to shove. I feel like we've talked about this before, but if the asking price for Lowry is $30 million, and that's pretty much what you got to give for him, and it's like 2 or 3 years, and Lowry's sitting there telling you, hey, Dallas, I'll sign with you right now, 2 years, $60 million, but it means you have to say bye to Tim Hardaway. Are you doing that with Lowry?
Oof. I'm starting to think like Lowry without Tim Hardaway, all of a sudden you're you're just really struggling in the shooting department.
But you have no, okay. Well, I don't want to say that. You have okay, I'll say it this way. You have a definitive 3. right? You have
Top 3. Yeah.
yeah, you have a definitive 3. I was gonna say a big 3, but you have a definitive 3 at that point.
Why is it big 3 all of a sudden like just this thing like only reserved for the best of the best? Like
I was leaving American
someone
Airlines
was-
Center, by the way, on draft night. It was super late, and all the big 3 stuff is there in the arena.
Oh,
and
for
I was like,
the big 3 league, like Ice Cube's
yeah, they're
league.
like coming in. I'm like, wow, I didn't even know this was still a thing. But
Are they playing this weekend? We should go.
I mean, there's everything is being set up. So I'm assuming I
That
was
was
literally
fun when I
standing
went one
in the arena under the jumbotron talking on the phone, and there was no court on the floor. I was just standing on concrete. So I guess it's being put up this week. Or
That's got to
soon.
look really weird.
Very weird. Very weird.
To see no court or no ice, like nothing in the AAC.
Very weird.
All right. Anything else on Josh Richardson? We've talked about, the Lowry thing, the cap space that brings. And I mean, it's not Lowry or bust. I don't think. I think there's some other guys out there.
Well, I think the other, like, let's just say Lowry goes to New Orleans or Miami. Now you still have a lot of extra money. You still can. Let's just say you signed Tim right off the bat for $18 million. We have $16 freaking million that you can go shopping at that point. You can go to the mall and get you some cool shoes at that point for Nike. So you have $16 million to go. I mean, you can get a significant player for your team with $16 million, or you can split it up, like you said, 10 and $6 million. So
could you go get Dragic and somebody else? Like, I mean, bringing Dragic as your secondary creator. I've seen a lot of people in the chat, maybe they're Slovenian, maybe they're not, say, why would we want Kyle Lowry at $35 million? We get Dragic at much less, and his stats were better last year. And I'm like, okay, well, there's a couple of reasons. Defensively, I think the veteran leadership, the won a championship, those kind of things. But I'm down for Dragic as being the guy, as long as they can get somebody else. Can they get Dragic and Otto Porter? Can they get Dragic and one of these other wings?
And then still have the traded player exception too, that if you could go out and say like that, you're getting multiple guys right then in your rotation. There's also some cap stuff in this of like the order of events of them operating as an over the cap team, under the cap. Like there's all those details that we're not getting into right now that I'm sure will be detailed out over the next few days on how Dallas can order this to where if they're over the cap, they can use, part of the MLE, all this different stuff. But we can hold up on that as that will be flushed out over the next 48 to 72 hours.
I know you were live for like 1,000 hours over on the Mavs.com stream, but any draft thoughts? I shared a couple yesterday when we were on with Richard. By the way, we talked about all the undrafted guys the Mavericks picked up too with Richard. He knows all of them. He scouted a lot of them. So go check out that video on YouTube or go listen to it. It's the third segment on the podcast yesterday. So if you want to hear about those guys, go listen to that podcast. But just any thoughts on those guys or the draft at all?
Yeah, still more names to come to that. They got to, to those names of they're going to sign for the summer league, coming up really soon in a couple of weeks. So I'm just intrigued by the guy with 7'9" wingspan, NAI guy, Onu.
EJ Onu.
Yeah, he's going to be fun. I just want to see him. So I like part of his story. And I don't know about a couple of the other guys. I know the Louisville guy's a good defender, but we could go a million different directions with the draft. I did talk about it for 3 hours because that first round was 3 hours long.
It was so long.
What are we doing?
We planned for it to be 2 hours long, and I think 5 minutes between each pick. There's 30 picks.
The first round was legitimately 3 hours.
It's supposed to be 2.5 hours. If every team takes the full 5 minutes, it's supposed to be 2.5. Like that's the longest it should be. It was 3.
That's wild. Okay, so some initial draft thoughts from me.
It was 30 minutes longer than the longest it should have been. Anyway, I'm not complaining. We had a 6-hour broadcast for Locked On.
That's wild.
That is crazy.
Two ex-Mavs assistant coaches have some really fun young teams. And I was happy for Steven Silas and Jamal Mosley.
Yeah.
I liked what Houston did. As unfortunate as that is, to get Jalen Green a top, he's a top pick worthy player, to get his buddy and Josh Christopher. But freaking Garuba had to go there. I love Garuba. Now I got to root against him in Houston. But for them to get Şengün too, where they got him,
I think he's my guy. I think he's going to be good. I'm excited for him.
I love their draft. They have no expectations, just suck, and they have 1 million draft picks. Like, that's fun. That's
figure out who's going to be good.
Exactly. And then for Orlando, I mean, you get Jalen Suggs to fall to you at 5, and Mosley gets Suggs. Like, Suggs better than any of those other guys in the backcourt. And that's coming from me, who I like Cole Anthony. And then you get Franz Wagner. Like, you're getting Wagner and Jonathan Isaac on the wings, like, assuming he's back healthy. Like, that's a lot of fun. 2 6'10" dudes who can defend. And I'm so happy for Mosley and that team. And so, yeah, that was one of my takeaways. I mean, I love James Bouknight. Charlotte, just hook League Pass Charlotte Hornets games up to my veins, because I think I just want, can I just get the Charlotte Hornets package on League Pass? Because James Bouknight, LaMelo, just, I mean, Miles Bridges, just sign me up for all of this. Okay. I love PJ Washington too. I thought they got Kai Jones too, like later in the draft when people thought he was going to go to 11th. They made the trade for Plumlee, and I love what Charlotte.
Does that mean Cody Zeller's gone? Can you have a Plumlee and a Zeller on the same team? I feel like that's illegal in the CBA.
Okay, where did you stand on the Warriors? Did they take the guys just?
They got JT Thor too. That was the other. I was trying to figure out who the last guy is. That was another interesting
Auburn
one
guy,
they picked up.
Where were you at with the Warriors? Picks. Were you solid picks that now they have like a young core that's on a different timeline, or
It's just odd. Yeah, it's just odd to me. They have 2 teams. They're trying to walk and chew gum at the same time, it seems like, because they pick Kuminga, who's like one of the rawest prospects in the top of the draft, and they get Moody, who's like kind of can come in and play now, but is also going to be raw too, and just as a rookie. And they didn't make a trade. They were only going to hold out, I think, for Bradley Beal or somebody like that. And so now they have this core of, like you said. They have this weird team where it's like Draymond and Steph and Clay.
2 big threes.
And then they have Draymond and Clay and Steph. They have Wiggins like in the middle doing whatever, and Jordan Poole and them. And then they have this James Wiseman, Kuminga and Moody core. And you're like, what is this team trying to be? Now, maybe it works out where those guys get to train and play every day with Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and that's good for them, but it's not good in the short term for them.
And see, I just think it's trade assets. I think it's them.
How long have we been? Raphael said this on Locked On NBA. How long have we been saying that Golden State's going to trade these picks? We've been talking about this for a year. Maybe they're just waiting for the right situation, but. Well, we talked about it with the Wiseman draft. We talked about it now with this draft. Like, it's been 2 years we've been talking about them using these draft picks to trade, and they haven't done it.
But who are they trading for? I think them, just like Ben Simmons, they're waiting for Lillard or Bradley Beal. And if you're Golden State, you take these 2 guys who, for a lot of time, like Kuminga's been in the top 5 forever of this draft, and now he's recently, fell in the mock drafts. Moody was in some people's mock drafts in like a top 10 pick, 7, 8, 9 being considered up to there. So
these guys just lose so much value as soon as you attach a name to it.
They do,
to me.
But
you don't get the same value for, Kuminga that you do for, a top 5 pick or, top 7
but what if they took
whatever.
Duarte because he can play now with this team? You're not going to take him. You take 2 guys who have like it
doesn't lose all. It doesn't lose all his value for sure. No, but they do lose value. It is like a buying a new car. Like as soon as you pull it off the lot, it's
for sure
worth less, it seems, than when it could be that team that actually makes the pick and they get to decide. And there's something about having the power over deciding who it is that is more valuable than a guy that was picked that now we have to fold into our organization.
100%. But I do think, like, if Bradley Beal's getting traded in a month or something or whatever it is, a package of Wiseman, Moses Moody, Kuminga, and future first with Wiggins. I mean, that still sounds like a pretty impressive package to me. And so
you don't think Wiseman has lost so much value, I feel like, after that first year, as opposed to being the number 2 pick.
I think people would. I still think people believe in him. Can I ask you this? What was your biggest?
The only person that has to believe in him is Tommy Shepard and say yes, and
that's true.
Accept the Wizards trade.
What was the biggest surprise for you? Giddey, Zaire, or Primo?
Oh, we ranked these. I actually ranked Scotty Barnes because I just thought for sure that Suggs was going to go there. Raphael was not as surprised at Scotty Barnes. So I'm going to say
some people mentioned Barnes there.
I'm going to say Giddey. I think Giddey was just such a surprising pick. And I actually got to break the news to Rylan.
Oh, I saw his face. It was great.
Rylan Styles was live on the Zoom with me, and he was waiting, and I don't think he had Twitter pulled up in front of him. And I was like, it's Giddey. And if you're watching on YouTube, or you can just go to my Twitter at Nick Van Exit, scroll through my tweets. This was his face when I told him that it was Josh Giddey.
It looks like Jesus is returning through the clouds.
No. It looks like Jesus is returning, except for instead of Jesus, it was like a polar bear. He's like, this is not what I expected at all. But yeah, that was just such a surprising pick because he went so much higher than people thought. And they thought they were going, it was just a surprising pick overall, I thought.
Yeah. So, yeah, he was surprising. That was the first one. I was like, whoa, that's fun. Zaire. You called it. I got the other two predictions wrong, but this one was the only one I got right. I thought OKC would move in the top 2. They didn't. I thought Dallas would move into the draft. They didn't. But I did. My other bold one was Zaire in the top 12. Primo was my biggest shock.
Yeah, that one was
the
really
crap?
shocking.
And,
yeah, that one.
And I don't want to it's not on his talent. It's just any research. We're more of the parachute guys because we don't follow the draft all year round. It's like anything you're reading or mock drafts and all this stuff about Primo is like late 20s, early second. And for him to go 12 was like shocker. When Şengün was on the board, it's like San Antonio. Şengün's like your guy. I mean, like that fits your brand. And I also want to shout out the Nets. I thought the Nets had a quietly good night. That they flipped Shamet. They walked out of the draft with Javon Carter, Cam Thomas, and Day'Ron Sharpe. For a team that's going to spend so much money on, obviously their big names, Day'Ron Sharpe's arguably the best rebounder in the draft. Cam Thomas should not have lasted as long as he did. Javon Carter's going to be a fun, Javon Carter and Bruce Brown coming off the bench. That's defense for days. So I just thought the Nets had a quietly good draft night.
I'm trying to figure out where Chad Ford had Josh Primo at 36 on his big board right before the draft.
Dang. That's wild.
That's insane. And he's talking to a lot of people. He's talking to scouts, he's talking to GM. So he's not just going off of this is what my eyes see. He's going off of this is what NBA teams are saying too. And that's where they had him.
That's
that
crazy.
aggregate of all that together. I thought that was wild. Anyway, I want to pull that up because it's just such a. But he's the youngest player. It was weird. The youngest player of the draft and the oldest player were picked back to back at Duarte and Primo.
Yeah. And I mean, we've went this whole time. We didn't talk about Russ. And I just audibly laughed walking down the sidewalk when the Russ thing happened. And I was outside AAC walking through Victory Park when it popped up on my phone. And I just laughed out. I'm like, I just instantly went to the playoffs when LeBron and them were setting in the paint, daring him to shoot 2 years ago. And I'm like, bro, that's y'all are.
And they went and chose him.
But I think the hates went a little too far. He's going to be great for them in the regular season. They need another playmaker creator. It'll help LeBron. I get all of that. There's still it just all comes down to the playoffs. What happens? AD's going to have to play the 5. They're not going to be able to play a big next to AD. And I mean, it makes them easier to root against, right? Right.
Russ's resume now is all of a sudden insane. The players he's played with. Durant.
He's got those goodbye messages down.
Durant, Harden, Beal, now LeBron, Anthony Davis. That is a resume of
Poku. No, he didn't play with Poku.
He did not play with Poku. You just made the same joke Russillo made. Did you do that on purpose?
Did he really? No,
he made that exact same joke on.
I haven't listened to those
podcasts. Which is
they dropped 14 hours of pods and have.
So they did a live green room and they just dropped the audio from the live green room.
Okay.
So the first couple ones it's live during the draft. So oh, this is happening.
Okay.
Instead of doing a live show or something like that. But yeah, okay. What do you think about are the Lakers the number 1 seed? Do you think that this makes them the number 1 seed? To me, it's even more so than just Westbrook's. I think their depth is really going to struggle.
And if
then
one of them goes down,
if one of them goes down, like Anthony Davis and Westbrook, and LeBron just had injuries too. Like these are not guys that are healthy all the time, like Iron Man.
you do have Marc Gasol. Is McKinney still under?
That's like the only guy they have left on the roster.
No, they're about to do some dumb crap. They're going to get some players to come there on the minimum contract. They're like, why are you going there on the minimum? And LeBron's going to, I don't know, put them in some movie and get them some money. And
they have Luol Deng's contract. They have Marc Gasol. They have McKinney on a non-guarantee of 1.9. They have Horton Tucker on, as a restricted free agent. So
they'll probably like sign and trade Horton Tucker for something like really good or something.
Yeah, but I think they have the rights to Caruso, Morris, Andre Drummond, Dennis Schroeder still, Wes Matthews. So like,
dear Heavenly Father, please, I'm gonna do it live prayer right now. Please bring Drummond back to LA to have Westbrook and Drummond together. Amen.
Good morning, Isaac.
Is that the voice? That's incredible. Okay, I want to make a plug before we get off. If you listen to this on Saturday morning, you have a chance. Saturday morning, you have a chance to see us and a lot of other Mavs media.
IRL. See us IRL. In real life.
In real life at the pub in McKinney. Get there around lunchtime, okay? Because there's going to be Mavs fans there. And we're raising money for Jonathan Charks, a good friend of ours.
Yep.
But we're going to be doing a live Q&A. Nick, myself, Bobby, Tim Cato, The Machine, Garuya, Austin. Like, there's going to be a lot of people there.
You almost said Garuba just then.
I did. I honestly started to say Garuba. There's going to be a lot of people there. Live Q&A, talking all about the Mavs, offseason, Josh Richardson talk. It'll be a lot of fun. Jeff Skin Wade will be there. A lot of people will be there. And so let's have fun with it. Let's talk Mavs. I know we've said this before. There's people that reach out to us at games and be like, hey, can we connect? Can we meet? Listen to the pod a lot. And Mavs games are crazy for us sometimes because we're working them and stuff. But now's the time. Super laid back. We'll be there for, I think it's like 3 or 4 hours. A large portion of proceeds will go towards, John, his family. John and his wife will be there. So come out, have fun. Let's talk about
Come do
Mavs.
some day drinking with us.
There you go. Come have fun. Let's talk Mavs.
There you go. We'll be there. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Oh!